They thought he was just a dog. Just an old, retired canine, pacing around town like a ghost from a different time. No badge, no handler, no purpose. Until the day he broke into a clinic. Not a house, not a junkyard, not even a crime scene, a suburban pediatric clinic. He shattered a window, tore down the hallway, and stormed into an examination room just as a doctor was about to inject something into a child's arm. The syringe hit the floor. The dog stood guard, growling low and unmoving. For a few long seconds, no one understood what was happening. But later, when police tested that syringe, and when the truth about the doctor came out, the whole country would ask the same question. How did the dog know? It had started like any normal Tuesday in Millstone, Ohio, a quiet town with just enough people to fill a Walmart, a few diners, and 3 churches. It was a chilly afternoon in late fall, the kind where the wind carried dry leaves and the smell of wood smoke across town. Samantha Ford, a single mom of 2, was rushing to get her youngest son, Noah, to his 4 p.m. doctor's appointment. He'd been having dizzy spells lately. Nothing major, but odd enough to check out. The new clinic had opened up a few blocks down from Main Street. Bright sign, clean parking lot. A tall white fence lined the property. It looked professional enough, though a little sterile. Dr. Carl Whitmore had been recommended by a neighbor. Samantha hadn't met him before, but was told he was gentle with kids and didn't overprescribe like some other doctors in town. That was enough for her. The waiting room was unusually quiet, just the receptionist, who looked nervous and kept checking the time, and a flickering television playing cartoons. Noah, 8 years old, all freckles and curiosity, squeezed his mom's hand as they walked inside. "It smells weird in here," he whispered. Samantha brushed it off. "Probably just cleaning supplies, baby." They sat for a minute. Then the nurse, a middle-aged woman with a too-tight ponytail and a clipboard, called them in. Samantha tried to follow, but the nurse paused her at the doorway. "Actually, we are just doing a basic checkup today," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You can wait out here. It'll be quick." Samantha hesitated. "Are you sure?" The nurse nodded. "He'll be just fine." Across town, a retired canine dog named Bravo was roaming the sidewalks. He didn't belong to anyone anymore. After his partner had died in a car crash 2 years ago, he'd been passed from shelter to shelter, finally escaping a fenced-in yard and living on the street since spring. People fed him, some avoided him. But everyone knew him. The kids called him Sergeant, though the tag on his old collar still said Bravo. That afternoon, something pulled him east toward the edge of town, toward the clinic. He wasn't chasing a smell. It wasn't food, and it wasn't noise. But he ran faster than usual, eyes forward, head low. Inside the examination room, Dr. Whitmore smiled at Noah and closed the door behind him. There was a faint beep as the magnetic lock clicked into place. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing pale, almost translucent skin, and walked to the counter where the syringe had already been prepped. "Your mom says you've been feeling dizzy," he asked, opening a drawer beneath the counter. Noah nodded, sitting stiffly on the exam table. "Don't worry, just a quick booster. It'll help your blood get stronger." Noah frowned. "I thought I wasn't due for shots." Whitmore didn't answer. Instead, he walked over slowly, holding the syringe up to the light. Outside, Samantha's phone buzzed. It was her boss calling for a shift change. She stepped out into the parking lot to take it, pacing back and forth in the cool wind. That's when she heard the barking. Enjoying this story? Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals, for more powerful real-life stories about the animals that protect us, love us, and sometimes save us. It started as a low bark, steady, deliberate, coming from somewhere down the street. A few people turned their heads. Then it got louder, more urgent. Bravo rounded the corner of the clinic, his paws skidding across the concrete, eyes locked on the side entrance. He lunged. The receptionist screamed as he leapt through a side window left slightly open. Glass shattered, papers flew. Chairs toppled. She tried to grab the phone, but he was gone down the hall before she could dial. Room 3. That's where the smell was coming from. Not blood, not gunpowder. Something else, something chemical, familiar. Bravo slammed through the door. Whitmore spun around, syringe in hand. Noah screamed. The syringe dropped, shattering on the linoleum. A dark liquid sprayed across the floor. Bravo stood between the man and the child. Teeth bared, growling so deep it made the windows rattle. For a moment, no one moved. Then the doctor lunged for a drawer. Maybe for another syringe, maybe for something worse. Bravo launched. By the time Samantha heard the crash and ran back inside, officers were already arriving. One of them, Officer Medina, recognized Bravo immediately. "Jesus, that's Bravo," she whispered. "What the hell is he doing here?" Inside, they found the doctor pinned against the wall, eyes wide and hands raised. Noah sat in the corner, trembling but unharmed. The syringe was gone, soaked into the cracked tiles. Whitmore claimed the dog had gone crazy, that he was only giving the boy a high-dose vitamin injection, but nothing about the scene made sense. Why was the door locked from the inside? Why was no one else in the building? And what exactly was that liquid? Later that night, after the police had cleared the clinic and animal control had reluctantly escorted Bravo to the station for observation, Officer Medina sat with Samantha and quietly asked for more details. Samantha could barely speak. That man was going to inject my son without my consent, without explaining anything. She held Noah tightly. That dog saved his life. I don't care what anyone says. Medina stared at the busted window, at the broken syringe, at the boy with tear-streaked cheeks and shaking hands. And deep down, she agreed. But the story was only beginning. Because the test hadn't come back yet, and nobody knew what was really in that needle. It didn't take long for the story to spread. By morning, the front page of the Millstone Gazette read, "Retired police dog crashes clinic, saves boy from unidentified injection." Online forums buzzed with speculation. Half the town praised the dog as a hero. The other half wondered if it was all some kind of misunderstanding, just a dramatic overreaction by an old, unstable animal. But behind the headlines, something real was unfolding because the lab had finally analyzed what was inside that syringe. And it wasn't vitamins. At the police station, Officer Rachel Medina leaned over the forensics report, her fingers trembling as she turned the pages. She had worked with Bravo once, years ago, during a drug bust in Toledo. Back then, he was sharp, reliable, and precise. Never barked without a reason. Now, according to the report, the clear liquid in the broken syringe contained two key ingredients. It had a fast-acting sedative, often used in surgical anesthesia, and midazolam, a controlled substance with powerful memory-erasing properties. Together, it was a cocktail designed to put someone under and wipe out whatever they remembered. Medina let out a slow breath. What had that doctor been planning? Meanwhile, Samantha Ford sat curled up on her living room couch, holding Noah like he might slip away if she let go. He was quiet. Too quiet. Not traumatized exactly, just withdrawn, like he didn't know how to explain what almost happened and maybe didn't want to. "I saw the needle," he whispered at one point, not looking at her. "It looked weird. It wasn't like last time." Samantha stroked his hair. "It's okay, baby. You don't have to talk about it." But he did. Not out loud, but in drawings. That night, she found crayon sketches on his bedroom floor. One showed Bravo, large and snarling. Another showed a stick figure holding a black needle. The word lie was scribbled in red crayon across the figure's chest. Samantha stared at it, heart thudding. This wasn't just a close call. Something deeper was going on. Back at the clinic, investigators were sweeping the property. Officer Medina joined the search team mid-afternoon, her eyes scanning every detail. The place was spotless. Too spotless. "No files," said one officer, tapping on the empty shelves behind the front desk. "Not even a patient list. Everything's gone digital, but he didn't even have a printer." The fridge in the back held only 3 vials. One matched the broken syringe. The others were unlabeled. No framed degrees on the walls, no medical journals, no family photos. It was like a hotel room pretending to be a clinic. That's when someone opened a cabinet beneath the exam table in room 3. Tucked behind a box of gloves was a leather-bound notebook, thick and battered, smelling faintly of antiseptic. They handed it to Medina. Inside were rows of handwritten notes, each one dated with initials and what appeared to be dosages. At first glance, it looked like a list of vaccine records. Until she noticed the recurring note beside several entries: induced will resistance. Observed 72 hours, memory reset successful. Her skin went cold. This wasn't a pediatrician. This was a predator with a license to pretend. The next morning, A call came in from the Ohio Medical Licensing Board. Dr. Carl Whitmore didn't exist in their database. The license number listed on the clinic's website belonged to a deceased dentist from Kentucky. His credentials were forged. Even his name was fake. The man who tried to inject Noah had used at least 4 aliases in the past decade, all tied to temporary clinics, all as sharp, all registered under shell corporations, all shut down quietly after less than a year. Nobody had ever been charged. Until now. Medina drove out to the temporary holding facility just outside of town. The man, arrested as Carl Whitmore, sat in a small interrogation room, calm, polite, and completely unbothered. "I'm not speaking without my lawyer," he said flatly. "You're not getting bail," she replied. "We just matched your fingerprints to a lab tech who vanished from a Seattle clinic in 2013. He smiled slightly, as if that didn't bother him in the least. "We know you used that sedative cocktail before," she added, sliding the notebook onto the table. "We just haven't found all the children yet." For the first time, his eyes flickered. "Then you'll never find them. Not the way you think." At the station, Kennel Bravo was pacing again. Since the incident, the local shelter had agreed to hold him for a 10-day quarantine under observation, standard procedure for any dog involved in a bite or property intrusion, even if no one had been injured. But Bravo hadn't bitten anyone. He hadn't attacked. He just stopped a crime. Still, procedures were procedures until the test results came in. When word got out about the sedative mix, the forged credentials, and the notebook, the town's attitude shifted. By Thursday morning, the mayor himself came to the shelter. "We are releasing him," he told Officer Medina, signing the paperwork. "He doesn't belong in a cage. He belongs on a statue." They let Bravo out into the hallway, and for the first time in years, he wagged his tail when he saw someone familiar. Noah. The boy knelt beside him, arms wrapped around the dog's thick neck, whispering something no one else could hear. Samantha stood nearby, tears in her eyes. "Whatever he is," she said softly, "he was meant to find us." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the sky turned copper and grey, Medina sat at her desk going over Bravo's old canine records. She found something curious. In 2017, during a raid on a private compound in southern Ohio, Bravo had discovered a hidden medical lab, one tied to black market pharmaceuticals. No arrests were made at the time. The lab was empty when they arrived, but the compound's lead suspect had vanished before the raid. The name on the suspect list, C. Whitmore. Different first name, different photo, but the same cold stare. Bravo had remembered all these years later through scent, voice, energy. Whatever it was, he remembered. And this time, he didn't wait for permission. He acted. But one question still lingered. Why Noah? Why this child? Why this clinic? Why now? Medina circled back to the shell company that owned the Millstone Clinic. It was one of dozens connected to a private data analysis firm that had recently acquired medical records from insurance providers. According to that data, Noah had a rare enzyme deficiency, one that affected memory formation. Most doctors wouldn't even catch it, but someone had. And they'd flag him. Noah wasn't chosen at random. He was targeted. The next day, Samantha Ford was sitting on her porch watching Noah and Bravo nap side by side in the backyard when her phone buzzed. It was Officer Medina. "We just found something else," she said. "There's a second notebook, hidden behind the baseboards in the clinic." "What's in it?" Samantha asked, voice shaking. There was a pause. A list of names with dates, ages, most of them under 10. Samantha held her breath. Some are crossed out, some aren't. There were 27 names in the second notebook, all handwritten in blocky, deliberate letters, each with a date beside it, each with an age. The youngest was 4, the oldest was 11. Officer Rachel Medina stared at the list, the brittle leather cover resting on the table in front of her, her knuckles wide around a pen she wasn't even using. Some of the names were crossed out with a single line. Others were circled. A few had a red asterisk next to them. And none of them, not a single one, had ever been reported missing. That fact hit her harder than anything else. Across town, Samantha Ford sat at her kitchen table, her phone on speaker as she talked with Rachel, trying to process what it all meant. But why? Why wouldn't anyone report these kids missing? Samantha asked, eyes fixed on the backyard where Noah played fetch with Bravo. "We don't know yet," Rachel replied. "We've run the names through every database, school records, child services, even state immunization logs. Most of them don't show up anywhere at all. It's like they never officially existed. Samantha's voice cracked. Then who were they? We think, Rachel hesitated. Some of them might have come through the foster system or private group homes, places with gaps, places nobody watches closely. Samantha felt her stomach turn. The idea that someone had built an entire clinic just to target children who wouldn't be missed. It was more than horrifying. It was strategic, cold, calculated, evil. That afternoon, Rachel called in help from the State Bureau of Investigation. 2 agents arrived the next morning. Agent Marcus Cole, a quiet man with tired eyes and a military bearing, and Agent Tessa Grady, who moved like she already knew the ending to every story. They didn't waste time. "We are not looking at a one-off," Grady said after reviewing both notebooks and the forged medical license. "This is part of a pattern, a network." "How big?" Rachel asked. Cole exhaled. "Unknown, but the same clinic setups shown up in at least 3 other states over the past 10 years. Temporary lease, no EMR system, no insurance billing, just cash or low-fee community wellness visits. And always near underprivileged neighborhoods," Grady added, "places where families are less likely to push back." Rachel clenched her jaw. So this wasn't about money. "No," Grady said, "this was about access." While the agents built their case, Bravo became an overnight celebrity. Local news crews flocked to Millstone to film footage of him lying under a tree in Samantha's backyard or trotting beside Noah like a furry shadow. People left chew toys and bones at the shelter fence. A bakery even sent over a dog-shaped cake. But Bravo didn't care for the attention. He stuck close to the boy. And if anyone he didn't know came within 10 feet of Noah, he stepped forward just enough to say, "I see you. Don't try anything." Noah, for his part, still wasn't talking much. But at night, Samantha heard him whispering to Bravo. Full conversations, little secrets, sometimes jokes, sometimes fears. "He's going to come back, you know," he whispered one night when he thought no one was listening. "People like him always come back." Samantha didn't know what to say because part of her believed it, too. By the end of the week, investigators got a hit on one of the names in the second notebook. A girl named Maria G., listed at age 7. The record was old, just a single fingerprint scan from a failed school enrollment in Phoenix, Arizona. Her guardianship had been under a now-defunct private group home called Hopes Creek Family Services. The home had closed in 2019 after a whistleblower reported neglect. No charges were filed. Grady's voice was tight when she delivered the update to Rachel. They think the name Carl Whitmore applied for access to that home as a volunteer pediatric consultant in 2018. No background check required. Rachel felt sick. This man hadn't just slipped through cracks. He had crawled into them, burrowed deep, and set up shop right beneath everyone's noses. And nobody stopped him. Not until Bravo. It wasn't long before the feds got a warrant to search a storage unit rented under one of Whitmore's aliases just outside of Columbus. What they found made seasoned officers step outside to breathe. Inside were 4 steel cabinets, locked, hidden behind a stack of broken chairs and cardboard boxes labeled office supplies. Inside the cabinets, folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a child's first name and last initial. Polaroids clipped to the inside covers, dosage records, behavioral observations, annotations that made Rachel's skin crawl. Subject G responds well to visual cues. Sleep depth improved on second trial. Minor bruising. No reported memory afterward. All handwritten, all in the same tight block letters. And tucked in the very back, in a separate envelope, was a list of prospects. 5 names, including Noah Ford, the only one with a red star next to it. Rachel drove back to Millstone in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She didn't stop at the station. She went straight to Samantha's house. Noah was sitting on the front porch with Bravo, playing with a plastic fire truck. When he saw her, he stood up slowly. Rachel got down on one knee in front of him. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. "I want you to know you're really, really brave." Noah didn't say anything, just nodded once and went back to playing with the truck. Rachel stood up and turned to Samantha. "We found your son's name on a list," she said quietly, "in a storage unit near Columbus, along with dozens of other files, medical logs, observations." Samantha's breath caught. Was Noah hurt before? We don't believe so, Rachel said. But we think he was next. Samantha looked down at her son, then at the dog lying beside him, head on his paws, eyes alert. Bravo looked back at her, and for the first time, she fully understood. He hadn't stumbled into that clinic. He had hunted it. That night, Rachel sat in her apartment, staring at Bravo's old canine record again. There, in the margins, were notes from his final year on the force, exceptional memory recall, sensitive to chemical cues, strong reaction to specific stimuli, unidentified triggers. Consider for experimental ops. At the time, no one had pursued it. Budget cuts, transfers, then the car crash that killed his handler. The file had just ended. But Bravo hadn't forgotten. He had carried something with him. A scent, a pattern, a feeling. And when he saw Whitmore again, he knew. He didn't need a warrant or backup or permission. He just acted. And maybe that's what scared people the most. That a dog had seen what no one else did. That he chose to stop it. The more they uncovered, the less anyone wanted to believe it had been real. A fake pediatrician, dozens of untraceable children, a notebook buried behind baseboards listing names no one could find in any system, and a retired canine dog, living on scraps, half forgotten by the world, had cracked it open like it was just another training drill. But Rachel Medina wasn't interested in the headlines anymore. She wanted the truth because there were still too many pieces missing, too many kids still unaccounted for. In a quiet federal building just outside Cleveland, Medina sat across from Agent Grady at a white conference table littered with documents. On the wall behind them, pinned with pushpins and red thread, was a growing web of names, locations, aliases, and facility addresses. All of them pointed to one name, Dr. Carl Whitmore, or whatever his real name had been before he buried it beneath a stack of stolen identities. "What's this one?" Medina asked, pointing to a blurry photo clipped to the board, an exterior shot of a defunct wellness center in Shreveport, Louisiana. Opened in 2015, Grady said, flipping through her notes. Operated for 10 months, shut down after 2 incidents involving child discomfort during treatments. No legal follow-up, no lawsuits, no criminal charges. Staff disappeared a week before state auditors showed up. No records of patients. Medina asked. Grady shook her head. Only cash logs, no electronic charts, no appointment system. Same pattern. Medina muttered, always cash. Always undocumented kids. Always gone before anyone can touch him. Grady nodded. But this time, we touched him. Back in Millstone, Samantha Ford sat in a modest therapy office with her son, Noah. Both of them faced a gentle-voiced child psychologist named Dr. Leah Markham. Noah had opened up more in the last week than anyone expected. About the injection, the room, the man's cold eyes, the way the door had clicked shut when his mom wasn't looking. But more than anything, he talked about the dog. How did he know? Noah asked for the 3rd time that session. How'd he find me? Dr. Markham smiled. That's the thing about dogs like Bravo. They're trained to find things people miss. They use their nose, their ears, even feelings we don't understand. Noah looked thoughtful. So he felt something was wrong. I think he knew something was wrong, she said gently. And he came to help. Noah glanced down at the dog bed by the couch where Bravo now lay during every session, like he'd been hired full-time. He always knows, the boy whispered. That evening, as darkness settled over Millstone, Officer Medina received a call from a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was raspy, male, older. I saw the news, he said, about the doctor, the clinic, the dog. Who is this? Medina asked. I knew him. Not as Whitmore. Different name. Years ago, I was a security contractor in Honduras. He was Dr. Raymond Alden back then. Ran a health initiative for displaced kids. Medina scribbled fast. What happened? He vanished. Took his data. Burned the field tent to the ground. They never found the kids. Why are you calling now? Because the dog. I've seen that dog before. Medina froze. What? In the compound in Ohio, the drug raid. He was the K9 that flushed out the lower lab. Bravo. He wasn't just remembering faces or voices. He had tracked this man for years. Meanwhile, in a private lab in Washington, D.C., A federal forensics team ran new DNA tests on the broken syringe from Millstone. They weren't just testing for known chemicals this time. They were testing for what it had been mixed with because it didn't act like any sedative they'd used in hospital settings. What they found made one tech drop her coffee. There were strands of synthetic RNA, modified enzymes, a chemical signature not found in any FDA-approved medication. In short, experimental biogenics, a compound designed to alter neural pathways in developing children, to manipulate memory, to suppress emotion, or worse, control behavior. It wasn't a booster. It wasn't a sedative. It was a prototype. The next day, Grady called Medina. "I need you to sit down for this," she said. Medina already was. "We believe the man known as Whitmore was part of a black-budget medical program during the early 2000s, a DARPA-funded initiative exploring memory suppression for PTSD and behavioral reprogramming." "Military experiments," Medina said, stunned. It was shut down in 2008 after multiple ethics violations, but a handful of researchers went dark, vanished. "We think he kept working off the grid, using kids instead of soldiers, testing on those no one would trace." Rachel's voice shook. "Why kids?" "Because their brains are more malleable, more responsive, easier to rewrite." That night, as Samantha opened her laptop to check her email, she found something strange in her inbox. No sender, no subject line, just a video. She clicked. It was grainy, surveillance style, shot from above in what looked like a clinical room. A child sat on an exam table. A man, Whitmore, stood nearby, holding a syringe. There was no sound, but the look in the child's eyes, blank, told her everything. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. The next morning, she turned it over to Medina. A team traced the file's IP origin to a mass server in Romania, likely part of a whistleblower network. They believed someone was leaking footage to pressure the feds, and they were right. Within 48 hours, a national media outlet broke the story: secret memory experiments on children exposed. Public outrage exploded. News vans descended on Millstone. Bravo was splashed across television screens. Samantha's house became a fortress of reporters and well-wishers. But the mood shifted when another name from the notebook surfaced. One of the children, Maria G., was found. She was 16 now, living under a different name in a youth shelter in New Mexico. She had no memory of a doctor, but she remembered the dog. "He barked real loud," she said during a video call with Grady. "That's all I remember. Like something deep, like he was trying to wake me up." She paused. "I was about to be given a shot. Then there was barking, then nothing." Back in Millstone, Noah was watching cartoons on the couch when he turned to his mom and asked quietly, "Will they come after Bravo?" Samantha blinked. "Why would they?" "Because he knows too much." It was a childish thing to say. And yet, something about it felt right. That night, someone broke into the Millstone animal shelter. They cut the power, smashed the back fence, got as far as the kennels before tripping the silent alarm. By the time officers arrived, they were gone. But one thing was clear. Bravo wasn't in his enclosure because he'd never been there. Samantha had brought him home 2 nights earlier, against protocol, after Noah couldn't sleep without him. In doing so, she may have saved his life. Medina reviewed the shelter CCTV footage. A tall figure in a black hoodie moved deliberately, quickly, like they'd done this before, but the camera caught one clear frame of their face. Whitmore's accomplice, unknown, unidentified until facial recognition pinged a match. Biotech consultant, former government contractor, vanished in 2011. The net was getting wider, and this wasn't over. By now, everyone in Millstone knew Bravo's name. The retired K9 who had once sniffed out narcotics and weapons now had his face on national TV, his story trending on every social media platform under the tag hashtag Bravo the Hero. But the people who celebrated him had no idea how deep this went. No clue that behind the headlines, a covert manhunt was unfolding and that somewhere, someone still wanted to silence him. Because Bravo wasn't just a hero. He was a witness. FBI agent Tessa Grady stood in the war room they had built in the basement of the federal office in Cleveland. Maps, photos, chemical reports, and classified dossiers covered the walls. The entire operation had been upgraded to a Level 4 domestic threat investigation. Whitmore's true name was still unconfirmed. The closest guess was Raymond L. Kane, a former neuroscientist with top-level clearance who had disappeared in 2009 after testifying in a sealed military ethics hearing. But his accomplice now had a name: Dr. Nolan Stokes, a biotech engineer who had worked on early prototypes of memory suppression treatments under DARPA's Neural Loop initiative. The same treatments now showing up in Whitmore's syringe formula. Stokes had vanished without a trace after 2011, until last week, when he broke into the Millstone Animal Shelter. And now they knew he wasn't just helping Whitmore. He was still actively testing. Samantha Ford sat on the back porch, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee while watching Noah and Bravo nap in a pile of blankets on the grass. Every few minutes, Bravo's ears twitched. Even in sleep, he was alert. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel Medina: "Need to talk privately, not by phone." Within 20 minutes, Medina arrived. She looked exhausted, dark circles, hair in a messy ponytail, shoulder holster half exposed beneath her jacket. "I need to ask you something," she said as she sat across from Samantha. "Anything. What if we use Bravo to draw them out?" Samantha stared at her. "What?" "A controlled trap, staged at a secure site. Cameras, agents, bait. We release news that he's been moved for a medical checkup to a new facility outside Columbus. The real location will be hidden, but the decoy will be public. If they're watching him, which we believe they are, they'll come." Samantha glanced back at her son. "You're asking me to put him in danger again." Medina's voice dropped. "He's already in danger." That night, the press received an exclusive tip. Bravo was being moved to a state-run animal behavioral lab in Columbus for further study and recognition. The facility wasn't real. It was a shell, a trap. Outside of town, on a back road lined with pine trees and farmland, federal agents set up cameras, snipers, and perimeter sensors around a rural training site formerly used by Homeland Security. Bravo was brought in under the cover of darkness. Medina stayed with him. She trusted him more than most people she worked with. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a partner. When they reached the fenced-off area, Bravo stopped walking. He sniffed the air, low growl, ears back. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. But he didn't answer. He never barked when he was truly worried. He simply braced himself. 20 miles away, in a rundown motel on the edge of Dayton, Nolan Stokes watched the news footage from a battered laptop. He clicked pause on a freeze frame of Bravo being led into the van. Then he smiled. At 3:42 a.m., the motion sensors picked up movement at the perimeter. A single figure, no vehicle, no thermal trace of weapons. Grady ordered lights off, radio silence. The figure approached the fence slowly, carefully. Bravo stood up inside the facility and began pacing. He wasn't growling, not barking either, but his hackles were raised. That's when Medina noticed something strange. Bravo wasn't looking at the intruder. He was looking up. A sudden bang, not from the gate, from the roof. 2 flashbangs dropped down the air vent shafts. Agents scrambled, half-blinded, grabbing gear, shouting positions. But Bravo didn't flinch. He charged the door, scratched it, then backed away. Seconds later, the door burst open. Medina turned just in time to see a figure in full tactical black slide down the roof, land on the ground, and throw a canister inside. But Bravo didn't go for the intruder. He ran past him, toward the rear hallway. That's when they realized there were 2 of them. The man in black fled. Grady pursued, drones activated, choppers prepped for launch. But Bravo had already found the second one. Down in the boiler room, near the emergency generator, a second figure was crouched beside a suitcase-sized device wired to the backup grid. A remote signal disruptor. They weren't just trying to break Bravo out. They were trying to wipe the surveillance clean. He growled low, deep, ferocious. The man turned, and Bravo lunged. By the time the agents caught up, Bravo had the man pinned, clothes torn, face blooded, wrist dislocated. It was Stokes, alive and very much in shock. He just knew where I'd be," he muttered, dazed, as they cuffed him. Medina didn't answer. She just looked at Bravo and smiled. Stokes gave up more than they expected. He cracked within 6 hours, told them everything. The labs, the kids, the early tests on refugee populations, the memory eraser compounds, the behavioral corrections, the failed trials that ended in trauma or worse. And, most importantly, he gave them Whitmore's next location, a private property in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, a compound built under a false name, a place where, according to Stokes, children were still being held. Samantha didn't sleep that night. When she closed her eyes, all she saw was Noah strapped to an exam table. All she heard was Bravo's bark echoing through her bones. At sunrise, she packed a bag for Noah and brought him to her sister's in Cincinnati. She didn't say when she'd be back. 3 days later, under full federal command, a raid team descended on the compound in North Carolina. They expected guards. They expected resistance. What they didn't expect, what they weren't ready for, was what they found underground. For children, malnourished, quiet, emotionally flat, no memory of how long they'd been there. One girl, about Noah's age, wore a hospital bracelet with the initials MW3. She didn't speak, but when she saw Bravo, she reached out and hugged him hard. That night, as the team packed up evidence and medical teams rushed the children to care, Grady leaned over to Medina. "I've worked bio-trafficking for 11 years, she said. "I've never seen a dog do this." Medina looked down at Bravo. He was asleep now, tail twitching in a dream. Maybe chasing something, or maybe remembering. "Maybe," she said, "we should have let him lead us from the beginning." The official report called it Operation Silent Echo. The raid in the Blue Ridge Mountains rescued 4 children. The media coverage praised federal agents, analysts, and tactical teams. It showed photos of government vans, of gated compounds, of relieved officials shaking hands. But the people who were there, they knew better. This hadn't started with a tip or a wiretap or a confession. It had started with a dog. A battered, retired canine with fading eyes, graying fur, and the kind of memory no scientist could replicate. His name was Bravo. And without him, none of those kids would have been found. The children rescued from the North Carolina compound were taken to a trauma recovery center in Asheville, where specialists worked to gently piece together who they were and what had been done to them. At first, they didn't speak much. They didn't cry either. They just stared at walls, slept in corners. The doctors called it flattened effect, the emotional toll of long-term conditioning. It could take months, even years, to rebuild what was taken. But something unexpected happened. One of the boys, 6 years old, barely 50 pounds, spoke his first words 2 days after arriving. Not to a doctor, not to a social worker. To Bravo. He knelt in the grass beside the dog, gently placed his hand on Bravo's head, and whispered, "I saw you in my dream." Back in Millstone, Samantha Ford tried to find normal again. Noah was quieter these days, not scared, just older somehow. Like he'd seen something most adults never would and carried the weight of understanding it too soon. He didn't sleep without Bravo by his side. He didn't go to school without him either. At first, the district raised objections. "No dogs on campus," the principal said. But within 24 hours, over 2,000 parents signed a petition, and the school board caved. Bravo became a fixture at Lincoln Elementary. Part emotional support, part security, and part living legend. Meanwhile, Rachel Medina was promoted. She didn't ask for it. Didn't even want it, really. But after everything, her name was on every report. Every news outlet wanted a quote. Every agency wanted a debrief. The story was too big to ignore. She stayed in Millstone anyway. Turned down the DC transfer. Requested a reassignment closer to the Child Crimes Division in Ohio. "I don't want to chase fugitives anymore," she told Grady over coffee one morning. "I want to chase the ones who don't leave paper trails." Grady understood. Some things change you forever. By spring, Bravo's health started to slip. Nothing sudden, just slower movements, joint stiffness, less interest in food. Dr. Morales, the town vet, said it wasn't uncommon for older shepherds. "He's got a lot of miles," she said gently. They adjusted his diet, started him on supplements, let him nap longer in the sun. Noah took it the hardest. "Is he going to die?" he asked Samantha one night. She knelt beside him. "Not for a while, honey. And when he does, he'll know he did everything he was meant to do." Noah didn't cry. He just leaned into Bravo's side and whispered, "Please stay." That summer, the governor invited them all to the state capitol. A ceremony was held. Bravo was awarded the Ohio Medal of Civil Valor, the first animal in the state's history to receive it. A bronze statue was commissioned for the Millstone Town Square. It showed Bravo in motion, head low, eyes forward, guarding a child. Samantha stood in the crowd, holding Noah's hand. He didn't smile for the cameras. But when Bravo sat beside him, tail thumping, the boy leaned over and kissed the dog's nose. That was all that mattered. 2 weeks later, Bravo collapsed in the backyard. He wasn't in pain, just tired. They rushed him to Dr. Morales' office, where he was stabilized and kept overnight. Medina came. Grady called from DC. People from all over the country sent messages, letters, donations. Some even drove cross-state just to sit outside the vet's office and pray. And inside, Bravo slept peacefully, head resting against Noah's leg as the boy whispered stories and promises and thank yous into his fur. The town was holding its breath. But Bravo wasn't done yet. He made it through the night, made it through the week. And one morning, as sunlight spilled through the windows, he stood up on shaky legs and walked outside without help. Noah and Samantha were there. Medina, too. He looked around, like he was checking the perimeter one last time. Then he lay down in the grass, nose lifted to the breeze, and closed his eyes. And this time, he didn't wake up. They buried him behind Samantha's house, beneath a large oak tree, with a plaque that read, "Bravo. He remembered what we forgot." A week later, the school held a remembrance assembly. Children wrote letters, drew pictures, lit candles. One little girl said, "He saved kids without even talking." Another said, "He was the only one who knew." Medina kept working cases. She now specialized in cold cases involving missing children, especially those from broken paper trails, unregistered homes, defunct group placements, failed foster reports. She kept Bravo's tag on her desk. Some nights, she swore she could still hear that low growl in her dreams, warning her, pointing her in the right direction. And she always listened. As for Noah, he grew, he healed, he never forgot. Every birthday, he left a toy under the oak tree. Every night, he whispered good night into the breeze. Every time someone said dogs were just animals, he smiled and shook his head because he knew better. He knew the truth. Bravo wasn't just a dog. He was memory. He was instinct. He was justice. And when everyone else forgot what was hiding in plain sight, he remembered. Thank you for following Bravo's story here on our channel. These stories remind us that courage doesn't always come from humans, and that sometimes the ones who save us walk on 4 legs. Now, we want to hear from you. If you could thank one animal from your life, who would it be? And what did they do for you that you'll never forget?